So welcome everyone to the Town of Richmond Planning Commission for Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. It looks like we have 4 of us and no guests at the moment. MMC TV, Aaron, thank you. We have Keith, so great. And it is nice, by the way, to be able to see people. So if you at least when you speak, if you have your picture there, that's good. Anyway, so.
Will do.
Hello, Chris. All right, so we're going to start out by just making sure that our agenda is what we want for today. Any adjustments suggested that for things that are not on this agenda or subsequent agendas? Oh, good. We have Allison. Hi, Allison. Right on time. All right. I'm not hearing any adjustments to the agenda, so we'll continue with the agenda as posted. No public here, so we won't have any public comment.
Well, actually, I'd like to use the public comment session for a quick update to folks about the 3 parks committee meeting that Virginia and I attended last week. And I know we're moving forward with the zoning district as is. We've got a hearing going, yep, basically to get it out of our hands, but
well, it will stay in our hands. It will stay in our hands because we'll take the input that we hear from the public meeting and then we'll readjust the.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. But it's pretty apparent that the zoning regulations as they've been revised, the flood hazard overlay district, the limited scope of the changes that we've made really don't seem to be able to satisfy the intentions of the 3 parks committee. They need to do some public outreach, but and get some assessments, but even moving the park around, but the interpretations from the zoning administrator on the language of the revised zoning is fully unsatisfactory. So that's going to be lingering around for a while, and I don't know if we want to start and talk to it. I suppose we ought to wait till the October 16th, but that's 2 meetings away. And I know we're supposedly not under the same sort of time constraints that we had, which came out of the blue like 2 meetings ago, where we found out we didn't actually have to do it and the ARPA money was sitting in an account somewhere and didn't have to be pre-designated for spending by October. So that's good, but we've got we should keep our minds open about the next steps to come with that park, because as the regs are written now, they're not going to go anywhere. So
it would be helpful to know a little bit more about what the committee found wanting.
Yes, so I have reached out to the 3 parks committee and asked them to send us their goals, to have something written about their goals. That's one request that I made, because we haven't actually, the full planning commission hasn't really had any communication from them. So I've asked them to please send us their goals in written form. And the other thing that I'm working on arranging is having a site visit to the playground area in particular and to the park with Keith and Tyler, myself, the 3 parks committee. If anyone else wants to join, that's fine. But
very much
really
so,
to look at the situation there together, all of us, so that we're not coming at it from different directions and not really meeting with the language that we're using. So I'm hoping that those 2 things can be done in this period of time. The 3 parks committee is going to be working on their band shell question, which they have work to do there to find out the repairs and so forth. So anyway, they can do that work. I think this time will be put to good use in terms of getting some other information. So, yeah, so, and we'll have a full discussion on the 16th.
That's great. Yeah, anything you dig up, I would very much appreciate sharing with the whole committee as soon as possible. We can't discuss it in between
Right.
meetings, but if you find particular notes of interest or references or whatever, it'd be good for all of us to hear about it sooner rather than later, because we need to put some thought into this that limited meeting time doesn't really allow.
Yep. So hopefully when they submit their goals, some kind of written document, I will definitely send it to everyone, and or they may send it to the whole planning commission, each commissioner, so that, everybody can be looking at this document. So thinking about it. So.
All right.
Great. All right. So we will move on to item number 5 on our agenda, which is to review and discuss draft 7 of the Jolina Court zoning district amendments and the new density bonus section.
You skipped a number, Virginia. We need to.
Oh, I did. Oh, review the minutes. Yep. Sorry. Review the minutes of 9/4/24 meeting. Any corrections, additions, comments on those meetings? Okay, not seeing any hands, not hearing any changes to those minutes. We will accept those into the record as written. All right, we ready for number 5? All right, so I did just very recently, like maybe yesterday, write this short memo that we can look at as we talk about the density bonus situation. Basically, I took the suggestions that were made at our last meeting about the possible items that we could have in our density bonus and rewrote the density bonus section. And then in this short memo, it just looks at what the result would be if this density bonus were selected. We've still got the 3 density bonuses, the senior adaptable, the parking, and the true affordable. Those are the 3 density bonuses that we have left under consideration. And of course, some work has not been done on figuring out exactly how they would be administrated, the forms that would be needed, the monitoring system, etc., will be done when we decide if this is the way we're going, for sure. So, if you look at the memo, it says, with the density bonus scheme as envisioned, Buttermilk would have the following options to allow for the development of an additional 15 units. And the reason that I'm talking about 15 units is because that's what they put in their rental revolving loan application as the number of units they would like to have added to building number 2. If they add 15 units, it brings us to a total density of 60 units for the whole project. So,
Is that the only data point that we have on that? Because it seems like we've had them say different things at different times, but maybe that's not so important right now.
yeah, well, the other number that they have asked for is 27 units, which is the second paragraph in this memo, which gets to Mark's favorite density of 24 units per acre, which would allow for a total density of 72 units in the whole project, and it would be 58 units in building 2 if we went to that density. So that is another number, you're right, Chris, that they have thrown around, which is, could we have 27 more units, and can we match the downtown density number? So as far as I know, those are the only two numbers that we have. So one is going from 15 units per acre to 20. That's with the 15 extra units. The other one is going from the 15 units per acre to 24 units per acre. That's going to give you the 72 units. So does that make sense? Anybody
Yeah.
have any other numbers that they've heard?
I would anticipate that. I'm just thinking ahead to talking to the select board about all this, and I think we need to be clear about how we present that. And then I'm sure that Buttermilk will want to say, their own piece at that forum as well. So
Well, you know,
I mean, I'm just
it's an
I mean,
unknown what
it's an
Buttermilk is
unknown.
going
It's
to
an
say.
unknown. Yeah.
It's a gamble. The whole thing is a gamble. Whether they take any of these density bonuses or not is a gamble. So this is not something that can prevent us from proceeding to something. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, all right. So if we go with the 15 units extra, which, it also makes some kind of sense if you're going to take away the commercial requirement on the ground floor. 15 units, you could put 15 units in there, or maybe a couple on some other floor of 13 units in there. That's kind of a nice filling of that space. So the way they could get that, if they took only the true affordable units bonus, they would need to have 3 affordable units in perpetuity, presumably. We have to decide that too, plus 12 market rate units for a total of 15 extra units. If they wanted to go with the senior adaptable units at Chris, your suggested 2 senior adaptable for 1 market rate, they would need to have 10 senior adaptable for 5 plus 5 market rates. If they wanted to take the public parking space option, which we're going to talk a little bit more about after Keith and I had a conversation with Josh and Pete about this, but the public parking space option, taking Mark's suggestion that public parking could be 2 public spaces for 1 unit, they'd have to have 30 public spaces to get 15 market rate units. So that's just an idea of what the whole thing would look like if, now we are also giving them the option to mix and match. So, they could have 1 affordable unit and 10 parking spaces, or the math is kind of endless. But this is what it would look like if they only selected 1, or if we decided that it was going to be a lot easier to administrate only 1 set of density bonus units.
Right.
All right, Mark. Yep.
Okay. I guess I'm a little confused by this. My understanding of the density bonus and how that works, and maybe I swear to God I did read this before the meeting, but I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around what we're actually saying. So right now the zoning is 15 units per acre.
Right.
For a total of 45 units. So our
In building 2.
total of 45 units.
Oh, right now. Right. 15 units per acre, a total of 45 for the project. Yep.
Okay. So that
Yes.
being said, the density bonuses come into play when they take one of those 45 units and turn it into a market rate or like a senior housing, for example. And so if they take one of those units and make it senior housing compatible, then they get an additional 4 units.
No, not senior housing.
No.
What was senior again?
So they
Senior.
take 2. Let me see if I got this right.
Yeah.
So they take 2 they take 2 of those 45 units and do them so that they meet the requirements of the senior housing then they get to add one additional unit. So it becomes a 46 unit building. And then for each two of those 45 that they do in the appropriate way to make them senior housing, they get one additional. So, if they've got, let's say there was no limit on the top and all 45 of them were done as senior housing, they would get an extra 22 units that would be added onto the building.
But we have put a limit on the top end.
And how is that limit defined?
So the
'Cause
limit,
I'm also thinking about this in the context of the same language, the same philosophy expanding to other districts.
so it's actually, it's a little bit easier. Well, all right. So what we would have in the zoning, which if you look at the draft, number 7 of the Jolina Court District 3.9, it says the base maximum residential density is 15 units per acre. The total maximum residential density, which equals the base plus the density bonus units, is 20 units per acre. So that's the top. So they can't take an endless amount of these and turn them into extra units.
And so that for Jolina Court, then the maximum would be 60.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
maximum would be 60 because they're going for an extra 15. So, and the way I laid it out in the memo is just showing you the percentages of the extra units because it's a little easier to see that way. So we say they've got the 31, they can do anything they want with them. They're all market rate. Those 31, they want 15 more. So of those 15 more, 3 true affordables earns you 12 market rate for 15 extra, if you see what I mean. For the senior housing, if you're thinking, okay, they're going to have 15 extra units by way of density bonuses, if they develop 10 senior or adaptable of those 15, they can have the other 5 market rate. And that would reach them the limit of 60.
Right. Though, I mean, this is picking nits a little bit, is that just to be clear, is that the senior adaptable units are market rate. It's just that they have physical characteristics.
Right. Yeah. Well, we
So-
understand that. We can write it differently if you like, but does that make it clear, Mark?
Not really. So what we're saying is that, if people use density bonuses, they can increase the district density by 33%.
Well, they can increase the district density by whatever we say.
Well, that's what, well, let's say it, because this district, this language is supposed to be able to apply to all of our different districts. So
Yeah.
if we're going to put a cap on the expansion, we should define what that cap is. And what
Well-
you're saying is if its current zoning is 45 and theoretically the highest they could get up to is
60 in this district.
then they're going from 15% to 20, or 15 units an acre to 20 units an acre, which is a 33% increase. And so we
Okay.
would be okay with that 33% increase in village residential, or
No, because so 2 things for right now, this is only applying to this district.
well, don't we want it? Do
Well,
something
yes.
that's,
Yeah,
Well,
but so
let's
say
not
we,
get ahead of ourselves.
townwide?
but this is what you do with each district. So you have your village residential district, let's say at 5 units per acre. That's the maximum residential density. So you would then add to that district a total maximum density number, whatever we want. We can put in whatever percentage we want. It doesn't have to be the same percentage as this. If we want to say you can go from 5 units per acre to 10 units per acre. In this particular district, we just put a different cap on it. And then they can work with, so if you want, let's say you have an acre that has 5 units, you want to get to 10 units per acre, you get 5 additional units of any kind. You could make 1 of them true affordable and 4 of them market rate. So it varies different district by district, and we have to put the parameters in each district using this same scheme, but the cap can be different because the base density is different in all the different districts, especially right now. It's just because we've fixed some and not fixed some others. So
just looking at Jolina Court again for a second, and maybe this will help Marcus, that we've got a cap of 20 units with density bonuses per acre, and we got 3 acres. That's how we get to 60. Now, Virginia, when we do that, we have to count building 1 too, also, right? So, and
60 includes building 1.
And building 1 is how many units? I always forget.
14.
13?
14.
14, right? Which is why we had
31.
31, right?
That would equal the 45, which is 3 times 15.
Right.
So if we keep the 14 in building 1, that stays 14. We add 15 into the 31 of building 2, that's 46 in building 2 total, plus the 14 in building 1 gets you to the 60.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense? So Mark, so it would be putting this scheme into other districts, we have to make the total maximum density what we think is correct for that district. It doesn't have to be 33% of that district, but we would use the same scheme of the ratio
same
of market
multiplier.
rate to special.
All right, that's interesting. Keith, just with your diverse experience in other towns, are you familiar with, is that like a normal thing, or is it more standardized that you're aware of? If you're aware of. If you're not, I mean, I get it, but
Yeah, some things I'm aware of. I mean, there are different schemes they can go about it. There's a scheme that in higher density areas, it's basically there is no density. You have to basically deal with certain parameters in order to do 5 levels. It doesn't matter how many that is. And I'm just trying to think about what we did in New York. It was all based on the size of the lot. So this is basically how it happens. What's different here is we're increasing this density, and this board wants to make sure that we get something that is tangible for the masses. And that's what you're doing with the parking, you're doing with the affordable housing, and that's fine. And that's totally legal. But form-based codes, which is what you're dealing with in Winooski and in much more urban areas, they don't have a density cap. You're allowed to have 5 floors, and you could cram them in there any way you want, as long as you take care of parking, as long as you take care of the open space and other parameters. So yeah, this is not uncommon. Let's put it to you that way. What's uncommon is that we have a suite of options for a developer. That, to me, I have not experienced that. So this is unique in that sense.
And Mark, one thing that I will say that speaks somewhat to your point is that some people do this by percentages. So like the state's affordable housing development speaks of 20% of the units being affordable in order for it to qualify as an affordable housing development. So that means that it's going to be different for every size of building.
Yeah.
So that's another way of laying it out, is that you know, if you have a 10 unit building, 20% of that is 2, right? Wait, 20% is 2, 10%
Yes,
is 1,
of 10,
20% is 2. If you have a 60 unit building, 20% of that is going to be quite a different number. So if you do it by percentage, it's going to vary in a different kind of way.
All
It's
based
gonna
on the
vary
density.
by percentage. We're not doing it by percentage.
Okay.
In
Just
this,
arbitrarily, we're gonna say, okay, the most you can do is 60. Right now, you're zoned for 45, but you can go beyond 45 with the density bonuses up to a number of 60, no matter how many public parking spaces you make available.
right, well, if you want to get all your density bonus units, your 15 extra units, if you want to get them all by way of parking spaces, you will have to have 30 public parking spaces.
Right. There was just one other, no, I don't know if it was in this section or in the other density bonus section, but the ratios. Like, I can see, like, I don't know, I kind of want to differentiate between like dedicated public parking and leased parking.
Well, this speaks to dedicated public parking, but
I thought I saw language in there about leasing somewhere. Where the hell?
well, we had originally in a different version a difference between true public and leased parking.
Yeah.
But if you have, and this is all going to have to be very carefully spelled out in some kind of contractual language about what public parking on a private property is. Pete was very concerned about this. Who takes care of it exactly? Who comes when there's trouble? But if, for instance, Gabe with the big spruce wanted to arrange to lease some of those parking spaces, we would have to decide if that was going to be okay or not. That seems to be a desire in a couple of businesses nearby to be able to do that, to make that arrangement with Buttermilk, not the town, but with Buttermilk. And as far as I'm concerned, that gets cars off the street. So what's the difference between that and public parking? But
Kind of a difference there in that, I mean, if you're gonna lease, one thing is if we're getting public parking, then it should be public and open to all public people. So if the town wants to lease some of their public parking to Gabe for his apartment, then that money's coming to the town. I guess is my point is that the person who's getting the density bonus is the one responsible for the maintenance because that's their density bonus.
okay, so what I've got so far in this draft,
Isn't that what you've got written?
no, in this draft,
Yeah.
it's just public parking.
And I would just add that the devil is definitely in the details, folks. You know, I mean, right now, kind of the exercise is to land on a number, and then, you know, we can move that. But once we can land on a number, I'll start dealing with those details.
Well, I guess my point is,
This is actually a hard one to get hold of.
it is.
Neither Josh nor Pete were that excited about it. However, we did take it to Dave Rue, our attorney, and he was like, whatever you need. You can make density bonuses, as long as it's optional, you can make it for whatever you want.
So does the town have any leased parking now? Do that they, the town owns, it's on town land, but they are dedicating it to a certain organization that rents that space?
Not formally, not that we know of.
So we're not getting any money for it, basically. The town isn't getting any income
Right.
for those parking. So I guess my point is that, yes, I would like to, keep this as a public parking and and
Yeah.
then get the town, and then if the town wants to lease it out, that's fine. Conversely, if we were to mandate leasable property, that the town, maybe give 4 parking spaces for 1 unit to get dedicated leased land to, and that then becomes a thing between Buttermilk and Gabe.
Yep. So I think for right now, I just wanted to keep it simple with the just public parking,
Don't you know me better than that?
2 spaces for 1. That's it. It's hard and going to be hard enough to administrate it anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Ian's got his
I just
hands up.
assume, yep, I just assume keep it this way, just for the moment. But, and it is in the details as Keith
From
said,
this year.
it's how you write it. Ian, what happened to your hand?
I don't think I need to get into it. I think you saying you want to keep it simple and as a public thing for now is good.
Is okay? I mean,
Yeah, I just honestly, like, when I hear it being spoke that the town is gonna basically take over control of these spots and then make money off of it by choosing to lease it to whoever doesn't sit well with me for some reason. But
Don't know
that's
me either.
I'm
I
getting
was trying
way
to
ahead of
establish
the whole
ownership.
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
let's leave out the least question
Yeah,
right now. I mean,
Okay.
it's vague enough what you have to do with your parking in the village. All you have to do is you have to have a plan. And we think that people go to Pete and say, is it okay if we park in the public spaces? And that's their plan. So
Right.
anyway, it's a little questionable. Anyway, if this was just straight on public parking, then that might help the situation. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
unclear whether we even have a parking problem. But Chris.
I guess the only thing, and I don't want to spend time on this either. I think that it's correct that we need to focus on the numbers, but let's not make this more complicated than it needs to. Anything that results in cars that regularly park in town having access to more spaces, however we do that, I think is a win. And so I think that we can use this this zoning event to get there, and there are probably multiple paths, but I'm all for not making it more complicated than it has to be.
So are you okay with this path?
I think so, as I understand it. You mean the one in the draft? I
Right.
think I'm okay with it.
Okay. Okay. So,
I do have one question, though,
Yeah.
if I might, because we've been talking. So, and maybe I just missed something in the meeting memo. The second paragraph, it does talk about 24 units per acre. Is that a proposal to move from 20 to 24?
that would be a proposal to move from 15 to 24. So
Oh,
your
okay.
base density is current at 15. And what the draft says right now is 24 is the total maximum, which is your base density plus your density units. That's to enable them to get 27 units, which they have spoken of wanting.
Well,
So it's an alternative. It's a complete alternative to the first paragraph, which is moving from 15 to 20 units. This one is moving from 15 to 24 units per acre.
Oh, okay.
It's complete alternative. And as you can see, it looks different.
Sure.
So if you went with a total maximum density, base plus bonus, of 24, you would have to make 5 affordable units, and you could get 20 market rate units.
I got it. I got it now.
Yeah. So does everybody see that? It's with a completely different total maximum density number. And this is what would vary from district to district, from other district to other district, is we would put in a total maximum number, however many we thought was appropriate. Okay, so that's just to, so you can kind of look at it and go, wow, 54 public parking spaces and 27 market rate units. That sounds like a lot of traffic coming out of the intersection. You know, we might not want to go with that high of a total maximum density. We might want to go to the 20 with their 15 more units that they wanted. That looks a little better somehow. 30 public parking spaces and 15 market rate units. You're already going to have, if it's public parking, you're going to have traffic coming in and out of there. So maybe 30 spaces is plenty.
Maybe we could maximize the number of public parking spaces as an option per development, so that we don't get 27. You know, like we say, okay, you can't have more than, I don't know, either a percentage or a hard number of units contributing to public parking option.
Well, you know, that's interesting, because I was sort of going to propose something of the same, but maybe for both public parking and for senior adaptable. I mean, I think the because of the way it's structured, the market rate kind of is self-limiting, because you get so many more market rate units for each additional affordable one. But I think there's my concern is that one or the other of the other two is going to end up being so much cheaper that will just, be used to max out the maximum density, up to the maximum density, and we don't get a mix of these. So,
Well,
I
the
think
idea is that
we're-
any of these can stand alone as benefits to the town. So that's the point of having several different kinds. Chris, I know you're more interested in the affordable units than any of these other things, but other members of the commission have been more focused on different ones, which is why the goal was to offer any of these. Personally, I don't think they're going to take any of them, but that is acceptable under this situation. They may not want to take any density bonuses. They may not want to give up their parking for their future plans. They're very possessive of their parking. So,
Well, just to clarify on the parking, because I don't think we resolved this last time, is this the way this is written now, referring only to parking in Jolina Court and not in the village district as a whole?
it's written right now only on the Jolina Court property. Partly because Keith and I could not conceive of Jolina Court Buttermilk going out and buying a property in the village to put parking on.
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to buy a property to put parking on, but they may buy parking spots that are already existing.
Mhm.
You
For
know, like,
sale?
For
Are
what
there
we talked about
parking?
for the Harrison, I'm sorry, the Harrington.
There are no parking spots available at Harrington's to be purchased. There's land that Harrington's has behind its building.
Mhm.
It would require purchasing land. I mean, I can't conceive of that happening. That
Okay.
Buttermilk is going to buy a piece of land to put parking spaces on? I don't think so. But if you really want to pursue that, I
Yeah,
mean, it seems like kind of a rabbit hole to me, but. So, how much do we care about this parking?
Maybe we could make those parking spaces in the district of the development. Because honestly, what good is if they go out and buy a bunch of parking spaces in the village south, which doesn't have the same congestion and parking as problems as the village north does.
Yeah, well, right now it's just written for their own property. And, the other problem, Mark,
But we
is
probably
if
want to,
if we're applying this to other districts, how is it even going to work in districts where you don't even need parking? Thinking along those lines that you were thinking of before.
Absolutely. It does
Going to
need,
apply it to some other district that doesn't need parking? I mean, you could restrict it to the water and sewer district. That would, I don't know.
Yeah.
there are certain things you have to, well, I don't know about even the water and sewer district, because you get parking, way up on, up near the, town garage. I keep forgetting the name of that road, but I mean,
Thompson Road.
Thompson. So that's not going to do any good. The extra parking should be available in the district where the development's being done,
Right.
if at all. And there are certainly some districts, village, or residential ag is, doesn't have a parking problem.
Right.
So we would definitely need to define just the districts in town where this would be applicable.
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I like just limiting it to Jolina Court.
It introduces so many other elements. It's complicated enough just being on Jolina Court.
Yeah.
According to Pete and Josh, it's complicated enough.
Yeah.
So, it's not one of my favorite bonuses, I have to say, just for that very reason. But, I do understand that some people feel that there's a need for more parking in the village. So, but let's just keep it simple. And if Jolina Court wants to give up some of their spaces for public parking, then they can have more units. Maybe it will be worth something to them. So keeping those things in mind, that these are the things that we need to decide now to move this forward, if this is the way that we want to go. We have to finalize the total maximum density number. Is it going to be 20 to give them 15 possible units, or is it going to be 24 to give them 27 possible units? We need to finalize the requirements for the senior or adaptable units. Get a little more information about that. Figure out which pieces can be affordable, can be accessible, and which pieces can be just adaptable. We need to develop all the forms, the monitoring schedule, the affordable housing. You're going to have affidavits as to what the tenants, any new tenants' rent is, the price of the apartment, which apartment it is, all of those kinds of things are going to have to be monitored. Who's going to monitor them? How is that going to take place? And what are the penalties if they don't do any of this? Is it a zoning violation? Whatever. Keith is going to be working on that. If he wants to talk more about it, that's okay. And then consider, the only concern that the town attorney had was that this might look a little bit like spot zoning. If we just do it in the Jolina Court district, we are doing it for the whole district, but guess what? There's only one property in the district for whom this could possibly apply. It might look like spot zoning. And so we said, well, we are planning to examine it to use in other districts, because why not encourage affordable housing or senior housing in other districts? That seems like that would be a good thing. So if we could have in our mind districts where we think this kind of scheme might work, then we could say, well, we just haven't got there yet. If Buttermilk comes and says, okay, I'm going to sue you people for spot zoning, we'll say, well, we're planning to examine this concept for these other districts because we really believe in these things that we want and that we would like to offer as density bonuses. So those are things, and then I put other on there because in case anybody could think of anything else that we would need to do. We also need to amend the PUD section to remove the commercial requirement. That's pretty easy. That's already in the draft, number 7. So I think what I'd like to do is to try to decide, is this what we want to do? What's the total maximum density? And then we can go and do those other pieces to have something that we can offer for public hearing. And then Buttermilk can come and say whatever they want. Other people can come and say whatever they want. So this is a good time if you don't really, there's something about this that you don't like, to put it on the table.
I'm going to do the opposite and say that I think this is pretty darn good for something that we can't know before we go out and try it, you know? And, you know, as Keith has said, you know, a range of options like this is unusual, and we don't know what Buttermilk will do, but I think that I feel like this is the way to go more broadly in town. It's a mechanism for increasing density in the village, which, you know, it will help the overall housing situation, help the overall transportation and environmental situation as well. And it's doing it for criteria that this committee has identified as being important. I don't, you know, I've got my favorite, and I know everybody else does too, but I mean, I think this is a consensus approach. I feel fairly comfortable about the numbers now. You know, we went around that some before, and I'm under no illusion that the select board won't get into the weeds about this and monkey with them some themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know how much benefit we're going to derive from spending a whole lot of time trying different options here, not trying to cut off conversation, but I'm just sort of saying I think it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a compromise from, you know, a range of viewpoints on this commission, everything from just increase the base density to whatever. Chris, what number for the total maximum would you go for, 20 or 24? Those are the ones on the table at the moment.
Yeah, I am actually going to ask Ian to speak to that because I feel like, and stop me if I'm wrong, Ian, you're the one who's spoken most forcefully maybe about having high, you know, truly higher density there. You know, I just don't feel like I've got a difference in my, you know, a basis for a rational differentiation between that. But I know you've talked about, you know, let's take the cap off.
Yep. I like the lower number, actually, because I think that there's some unknowns about the impact that this is going to have on that part of town, and not knowing, I'm feeling like erring on the side of caution a little bit in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, I mean, that was part of the reason for laying out the two, because I had a little reaction too, like with the second one, with the going to 24 units, for like, oh, that's really a lot. So, you know, if that is what happens to people when they see it, I mean, there are already people who think that the 20 is a lot, that the 15 is a lot. So the 20 is like kind of the compromise of all compromises. So, Allison, do you have anything you want to add?
Let's see, I have to get the mute off, I think.
You're
We
good.
can
You're,
hear you.
you're
Oh, okay.
mute.
Well, I guess I think there's already a lot of traffic in Richmond, and I would kind of agree with those who are saying that we should stay on the bit smaller side. You know, you can always add more, but once you get all that stuff built, you can't take it out. And if it turns out to be too crowded, that, and I don't know how you define too crowded, but I think that it would be good to start on the conservative side, but we do need to do something. So I think this is quite creative, actually. It's kind of interesting.
Good.
Yeah. And
So
no,
you'd go with the 20 as the total maximum. I'm hearing you say that you'd go with the lower.
that would be my preference.
Yep.
But I'm not going to argue if everybody else thinks that that's not enough. But I just said it. We can always increase them, but we can't take them out very well. So I think if we start and see how it goes,
Yeah.
that's the thing to do. There's an awful lot of traffic in town already, and I don't know if this is going to help or not, but
Well, it's not going to help, obviously, but
I guess the other thing to think about is if we do go ahead and apply this to other districts, you know, that's going to increase density in the village as well. And so that's another argument for starting more modestly, as Allison has said.
okay.
Yeah.
So Chris, you would be okay with the 20 units per acre
I would be okay. Yeah.
cap. And Mark, you would be okay with that also, yes?
Oh, I'd like to go to 24. Sorry, wasn't
You're
funny.
funny. You're funny, Mark.
No, yes, 20 seems like a good compromise.
Okay. So that seems like everybody. I'm fine with anything now. Okay.
yes, let's just do
No, I've spent
something.
a lot of time on it, so I'm
we
good
we
with it.
have we
Yeah.
have, and I think it's quite creative. But let's we got other stuff to do too.
Yes. Okay. So shall we proceed with a draft that has 20 units per acre as the total maximum residential density? Continue to develop the senior affordable, senior adaptable.
Mhm.
Continue to develop the monitoring and the administrative side of this,
Mhm.
and go with that. Try to get those done as soon as we can.
Do we want to float any of this? Give the select board heads up of where we're going on this.
No, I don't think so. I think we have met their needs, which is take away the commercial. They were good with that. Increase the density and get something in return.
Mhm.
Okay.
Then we're on that page. That's the page we're on. I don't think we need to do that. I don't think we need to ask Buttermilk if they'd go for it because they'll,
I agree with that.
whatever. I mean, Chris, do you think we need to go to the select board again? I think we've heard from them. They want all these same things that we want.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. We did that.
Yeah, we did that already. And, you know, they seemed to be fine with some increase in base density and some density bonuses, but there's, if you give them some increase in density, are they going to take any density bonuses, even if they would have? You know, probably not. So this seems like, okay, you want more density? You can have it, but you got to do these things.
Yeah.
So I think I think we can make that case to the select board, frankly. I think we can make an adequate case to the select board that we've worked through all the possibilities for this, and this has risen to the top.
I'd
So,
also
I
add
think
that
that's
we're
good.
going to have public comment also prior to it going, so this may still be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, we'll have a public hearing and we'll undoubtedly hear from Jolina Court people and other people in the village we will hear from, and, you know, traffic people we will hear from. And so there will be all kinds of public comment, I am quite sure. And then we can change it if it's something different seems to bubble up. All right, great. So we'll continue to work on those details, and, you know, the actual section 3.9, which is the Jolina Court District, is really already written, the changes. There are very few amendments that have to be made in there. We've added the fact that you can get density bonuses. We're going to put 20 units as the cap. The PUD section, very small changes about the commercial requirement being gone. So, you know, the actual amendments, other than the density bonus section, are pretty small. They're already done. We also have to put in a section about the affordable housing development mandate from the state, which, by the way, in this density bonus draft, I've said if you utilize that, you can't get any of these other density bonus units. So if you want to have 20% of your project be affordable housing, you can have an extra story and, you know, the extra units, 40% extra units, that is a state mandated thing. Jolina Court could do that tomorrow if they wanted, but if they do that, they can't utilize this density bonus system. I think that would not work.
And one of the other key issues is you're removing the commercial requirement for the first floor for building 2, 3, and 4, if there are those buildings. And obviously it stays intact for building 1, that is a requirement. So that's one of the bigger things that we're doing here also. You know, I mean, we're increasing by 15 units, not a ton, but removing that commercial is, that's pretty big. That's a pretty big restriction, you know, from a planning perspective.
Yeah.
In this environment.
And it does reduce some of the traffic, which we will replace with the public parking traffic, but at least some of that commercial traffic is going to be removed. There will be additional residential traffic, which probably, you know, it looks like it doesn't exceed the commercial traffic that we're removing anyway. The public parking will add some traffic.
So, okay, so just playing this out a little bit and thinking about buildings 3 and 4, let's say that that Buttermilk decides not to do any of the density bonuses, just for the sake of argument this time, and they build another 31 units in building 2, then there's only 15 units of residential that can go into 3 and 4. So if they build those, the remainder would have to be commercial, right?
Well, so
They could do a hotel.
They could do
Yes, commercial, that would be commercial, yeah. Sorry, Virginia.
but in buildings 3 and 4, the only way they could get any additional density over the base density, which is 15 units per acre, which they would be maxing out if they put 31 units in building 2. They are maxed for the base density.
Right.
For the whole property. If they want to put units in building 3 and 4, they're going to have to be dense by way of density bonuses. And they're only, if we put the cap at 20 units per acre, they will only have 15. And they will have to acquire them through the density bonus system.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So, I mean, if they only put if they earned 15 density bonus units and they only put a few of them in building 2, then they would have some left over from what they've already earned in building 3 or 4.
Well, that's what's interesting about it, is depending on what their strategy is or how long-term they're thinking, you know, this may manifest itself in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, building 2 is clearly going to take 5 years, and then
I would count on
building
that.
3 and 4 is 10, 15 years.
Right.
Probably none of us will be on the planning commission at that point. It will be somebody else's problem.
Oh, Mark's pretty young.
Oh yeah, Mark, he's on forever. He's got in perpetuity written into his planning commission membership. Okay, good. Well, that takes up exactly the amount of time that we had for this topic. And we will continue to work out those details now that we have a way forward. And we're going to go to the next part of our agenda, which we might work through quickly. You never know. We need to be thinking about the next thing that we're going to be doing, because hopefully we're going to finish up with this one. The FHOD is in the pipeline for changes after our public hearing, then going to the select board. The VRNs are already going to the select board. There is this new Act 181, which is really throwing a monkey wrench into the works because it's changing some of the rules from Act 47, but we'll have more on that later. So what we want to do is we want to think about what our next step here is going to be. We know that next year we need to start a little bit thinking about the town plan, because in 26 it'll have to be readopted. Does it need much work? Well, I don't know, maybe. The different sections, who are we going to ask to work on the different sections? All of that kind of thing is going to start in 25. So I didn't even put that on the list. But other things that we need to do is, if you recall, we removed the master development plan language and replaced it with critical permit conditions from the PUD section in the zoning regulations. We need to make the subdivision regulations, which still mention master development plan, we need to make them in alignment with that, which is going to require some understanding of what the natural resource standards are and what would count as critical permit conditions. So I have talked some to the Conservation Commission, and they seem like they might be interested in collaborating a little bit with us on it, which is good if we have to develop natural resource standards. So that's one task that we have, that we need to finish doing. It's something we started. Does anyone have any comments about that, or?
Well, that's a good idea. You do need to do that.
Yeah, and we do need to do it. I mean, we did say that we would do it, so.
Yeah, and you want to align those NRS or the natural resource standards with the potential for critical permit conditions. I mean, we've got to give that tool to the DRB,
Right.
and lay it out for them. It's not perfect. You won't capture everything, but at least you have a standard.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Act 181 also comes into that field as well as into the housing field. So
Yep.
the legislature has really gone out.
Gone out, so that's good enough.
They have made a lot of work for the municipalities in the changes that they blithely say the municipalities will deal with. But anyway, all right, we get off that topic because anyway. So the second thing we need to do is we need to look at the changes that Act 47 and now Act 181 require us to do in areas served by water and sewer. So the only districts that we haven't looked at served by water and sewer are the Village Commercial District, which is where Railroad Street is, and the other little district where Man and Machine is, which is actually in the Commercial District. And we would like to make those two both be in the same district, which is a water and sewer district, to which Act 47 and now Act 181 will have to apply. So there will be some change. You know, we haven't looked at those districts, so that would be one thing we could do, is just look at those districts. The other thing is our Village RC district is the only other one in the water and sewer district. We already did that recently, but that will need a few little changes regarding density and so on to make it compatible with Act 47 and now Act 181. So that would be in the line of finishing the village.
And I would add that that's basically code that the VRNs are coming back for refinement. So
Yeah. The VRNs that are in front of the select board, based on the guidance for Act 47, will probably have to come back to us briefly because of Act 181, but we'll be going into that in detail at some future point. If you want to read Act 181, it's a few hundred pages. It's tough reading. So, and it's the things that they have mandated aren't very clear. So we could think, okay, well, we'll finish working with the new state laws, 47 and 181, or we could finish the village altogether. I would really like to get the Round Church Corners complex where Man and Machine is brought into the village commercial district, because right now that little plaza is in the same district as the Lucky Spot, which is in a commercial district. The VYCC, which has no business being in a commercial district, it needs to go back to being ag res, but it has nothing in common with the other little pieces of commercial district that we have around town. It is much more suitable that it be incorporated with village commercial. So I would like to talk about that at some point. All right, is that it? I think I got the 3 topics. Does anyone have any thoughts about where we want to go, what we want to do? Do we want to do something else that is different from those things, or?
You don't necessarily have to answer now either.
No, you don't have to answer. If something comes up in your mind, then that's fine. You can say it. Otherwise, if we don't hear anything, when it comes time from all the current work to be introducing a new topic, we'll pick one or the other of them and start introducing it.
I guess I'd like to, these are good. I have no objection to these, but I'd like to put a placeholder for what I guess I would call, well, I'm not going to use that term because that'll just be divisive, but let's say energy optimization related zoning changes. We revisited looking at the energy code and requirements under the energy code. We've looked at some things that are peripheral to that, but I'd like to put a placeholder for looking at maybe taking a review of the broad range of things that jurisdictions across the country are doing to encourage the use of low carbon energy sources, to increase energy efficiency, to encourage low carbon transportation, that kind of stuff.
Okay. We'll put that on the list, and hopefully with any new districts that we take up, like the village commercial, if there's anything that can be folded into that, that's good. There are some things in Act 181 about energy. Okay. So that's all that I have on that topic. It's just to try to get people to start thinking about it, and also to start thinking about the town plan question that we'll be kind of working on in the background a little bit. Do things need updating? If so, how? To make them compatible with new state laws and also new needs. All right, so that's that topic. The next topic is updates and new business. So these are just a few little notes. The neighborhood development area presentation by CCRPC is coming up at our October 2nd meeting. Keith, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Why we're doing that and what it involves and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it just cursorily, because I'm not deep into it. We currently have the village center designation in the town, and we qualify for expanding that designation to what's known as an NDA, or neighborhood development area. And what that brings along with it is a reduction in fees, fast tracking of grants, specifically for housing and development within areas that have water and sewer. Basically not urban areas, but village areas and neighborhood areas. It also reduces the burden that A250 places on developers too. So it increases the thresholds of density potentially at this point. So there's a process that we have to go through. And the first process is for our zoning amendments to settle down. So then CCRCP can do an audit of our zoning regulations to see if we will qualify for the NDA. And if we don't, they will give us recommendations to get us down the path to qualify it. So the first thing is to understand what the program parameters are. And that's the purpose of this presentation by Taylor Newton. And it'll be remote, but you know, we were offered this free of charge. They're going to handle all the application fees. It's under a grant that the state provided to Chittenden County, or actually for CCRCP, and they broke it out into 5 municipalities within Chittenden County, and we were selected to be part of that at least initial look to see if the Planning Commission wishes to pursue this type of designation. So it is geared towards developers and to specifically for housing.
And this is one of the things that has been on the Housing Committee's list of things that we might do to encourage housing in Richmond. You know, the state mandated goals for housing are sky high. Richmond is never going to be able to build as many houses as are slated for our town per population. So we're thinking of things that we could do that are going to make it somewhat more inviting for housing to be developed. And this is one of them. So Keith, do you think we need to do the village commercial district or redo the changes to the residential commercial district before doing this, or can we just submit things as is?
I'm not sure. I think that we can, that'd be questions for Taylor at this point, because he's going to be the program manager for that.
Yep.
I know that the VRNs are so far along that I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Right.
They could be settled. Jolina Court, we'll see. There's not a huge amount of change in that. A lot of this is focused around, you know, holistic complete street planning. And we did miss an opportunity with the sidewalk, and I'm just going to state that as a fact, because that was a complete streets project, and that would have helped us qualify for this type of designation. But that doesn't mean that that they won't give us the option to go ahead and give us a suite of options to qualify for that designation, which I'm just not quite sure. We're not 100% around. My arms are wrapped around it. I did send a link to all the members at one point to the program that A&R manages, and if it gives you, it's a pretty good website to get around. It's user friendly, but it's dense. You know, simple as that, and hence why Taylor wants to come in and talk to us.
And one other question, Keith, if you know the answer, can you talk at all about stormwater? I mean, should we be doing anything about stormwater? Is that up to us to do anything about it? Is it going to feature in the NDA or not? Or is it something, is there anything we should know about stormwater, which we should, you know, have a system more than we have?
There's nothing that's really mandated except, you know, the 3-acre rules and the half-acre rules for development. I don't see that happening in the town, to be honest with you. My focus, when I can focus on it, is on sustainable stormwater systems that can be put into town, and maybe have that as part of the zoning requirements. Whereas, you know, if you have you know, these natural systems instead of just a pipe in the ground, but you have organic systems with, you know, basically really large rain gardens is what they are. They're linear rain gardens, and they work very well. Porous pavement, something to stop the water from concentrating on surfaces that don't infiltrate water. Or you move that water to areas that does infiltrate it, but it doesn't go off the property. So, it could be promulgated in zoning, but
It's already in the town plan.
it
We
is
have
in the town plan. Yep.
we have an action item that is low impact LID development, low impact development, which involves this kind of thing.
Yep.
And we've not done anything with it, and maybe, that should be somewhere on our list, but
I imagine you have some of the natural resource developments would fall into that, but I mean, that's more on a larger scale. That's a larger scale type item.
Mhm.
Usually open lands and the like.
Yep.
So
Okay,
remains
but
to be seen.
yeah, I mean, sometimes parking areas with trees and grass and stuff have to, they have to fit into the low impact area. Ian,
Got a question for Keith about stormwater.
Mhm.
Are you familiar? I live on Dugway Road, and there's a large parcel next door to me that the project was abandoned up there because of stormwater issues.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that at all?
I am not. Was it an active project before the
Well, they were
flood?
trying to put a driveway in, and they just bailed because it was going to. The requirements were such
that
with the
what-
stormwater
Is that Wortham Lane?
No, on Dugway Road,
Okay.
up behind the Rosen farm.
No, LaRose has moved forward with moving their driveway, is my understanding. So
Yeah,
I got an NRB bulletin about that this morning, actually.
Really?
Yeah, so they still have to go through the A250 process on that. So that is an active permit right now.
Okay.
That's under
I was
review.
just curious since it came up.
Yep.
I'm sorry to get off subject.
Oh, that's fine.
problem.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's coming up on the 2nd, is this presentation by CCRPC. Another thing that is going to come up, which will be a presentation, is there's a mapping system called BioFinder in Vermont that has all the layers of the natural resources. And, we're going to need, if we have natural resource standards, we're going to need data on which to base them on. Like the FEMA maps are the data that the flood hazard overlay district is based on. So that's the baseline standards. So this mapping tool called BioFinder allows you to add layers of different things that are required now to be considered, such as forest blocks, habitat connectors. They're all in new legislation that you have to make arrangements for smart growth, for protecting these, for clustered housing, all of those kinds of things. So in order to do that, we need to know what data is available for us and the DRB and the zoning administrator. Where's the data that they're going to be able to say, well, according to this map, this is a high priority habitat connector, so we're going to have some restrictions on what you can do there. Of course, this is not going to be popular, but it is going to be based on data that exists from the Agency of Natural Resources. So there's this, Keith is putting it up there, BioFinder, you find your town, you get the different layers. Anyway, Jens Hilke is going to have a workshop at some point on the best way to use this so that we can understand what the data is that we can use upon which we can base our regulations. So hopefully some planning commissioners will be interested in coming to that. That is also being done in conjunction with the Conservation Commission that needs to have this data available for them as well. We're looking at Richmond, the town of Richmond. The dark green is probably the forest blocks. I don't know what it is. I can't really see it.
Exactly. I mean, they break it down to wildlife road crossings. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
This is what this tool can do.
Because you have the forest blocks and how are they going to be connected? The waterways is one way that connections are made for plants and large mammals. Then you have these bottleneck points, which is a road, which is a problem. Are there places where the forest comes close to the road
Right.
that you can introduce, over time, crossings underneath the road, or, other tools that we have. So anyway, by state law, all of these things have to be considered now in municipal zoning efforts. So this is the use of the BioFinder tool, is to enable us to have the data on which to base such things. So
It's an
anyway,
amazing-
we will let you know when that workshop comes up. It's cool. You can put different layers on top of each other.
It's
We have a
amazing
lot
tool.
of forest in Richmond. We
Yeah,
have a lot of forested areas, like pretty much all north of Route 2
mhm.
is forested. And then, it's the VYCC and Andrews. There's conserved land in there, public and private conserved land. The Robbins Mountain area. So there's quite a lot of forested land. So we need to plan for the future, because this is a very valuable resource for climate change and tourism and logging and, many, many benefits. So
It's got a neat tool. It does color imagery by year, and it goes all the way back to 2003. And you could drop off all these layers, and it shows you the satellite from 2003, and you can see the changes that have happened in the town since then. So it's a wickedly cool tool, for lack of a better New England term.
yeah, and it is sometimes more impactful for people to see change over time. Oh, we're losing this or whatever, but we still have to allow for growth. So it's a planning job, is to try to figure out how to put all this together. By 2030, we're supposed to have preserved 30% of the land in Vermont through private and public means. By 2050, by 50%, we're supposed to have conserved. This is state mandated. How, but how are you going to do that? Well, they're leaving that up to the towns. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Unfunded mandate.
Anyway, so I'll let you know when that is, or Keith probably will let you know when that workshop is that is being arranged.
Yeah.
We're going to the select board on October 7th with the VRNs. We will see them back to us because of this Act 181, but more on that later. And I think that's all I've got, unless anybody else has anything else. I think we can wrap it up early.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
I haven't had much opportunity because I've been busy with the swimming, which just recently closed.
Hmm.
I haven't had much opportunity to look carefully at like Act 181. I mean, what are there any particular things in there that stand out to any of you that have been studying it that are important to Richmond?
Well, there's a long answer to that question.
No, I imagine there is. I imagine that it has to do with preservation of land.
Well, so what Act 181 is it was a compromise between people who want more housing. It was kind of driven by housing,
Yeah,
and people who want to make sure that the push for housing does not compromise the natural resources goals.
right.
Like, let's not put houses just everywhere because we need houses, right? Let's do it carefully.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is about Act 250. The whole Act 250 board is reorganized into a natural resources board. And our town attorney, Dave Rue, his law partner has applied, or maybe he's been accepted as one of the judges on the new natural resources board. I don't know why anyone would apply. They have been given so many study committees that are due shortly that it seems like a crazy job. But anyway, so Act 250 has been reformed. They've taken away some of the requirements, like for instead of if it's a apartment building over 10 units, it's over 25 units now that Act 250 gets involved. So there's less Act 250 involvement in the village centers and the towns. But the trade-off is that there is still Act 250 involvement in the hinterlands, in the agriculture and the forested lands. There's different, maybe more intensive land use protections with the trade-off of having more density in the village. And one of the things that we're struggling with right now is that it appears that they want to make a duplex only count as one unit. You know, we have talked about how if you have a single family home, you can have an ADU and it still only counts as one density unit. Because by right, you can have an ADU. Now it's, but we were told that duplexes were 2 dwelling units, which sounds right. And 3 and 4 unit buildings were 3 or 4 units, right? That sounds correct. We're now being told that both duplexes and 3 and 4 unit buildings only count as one dwelling unit. So this is why the VRNs are going to come back to us, because we don't know exactly how the new density that they don't like anyway, that was mandated by Act 47, which is 5 units per acre, how it is going to be affected by that. If each one of those units is a 4 unit building, you're essentially going to 20 units per acre. So
Yeah.
it's,
That's
it's a problem.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it, you know, how towns are going to make this work that have a density that was based on a dwelling unit being a dwelling unit, not 2 dwelling units being 1 dwelling unit, or 4 dwelling units being 1 dwelling unit. You know, the state really wants to get away from the whole density concept. They want there to be no density, but we are not there yet, and a lot of towns aren't. There are many, many towns who have density concepts, you know, and people want them. So anyway, so
I did just send the legislative summary. That's the one we've been working off of, Virginia, to the board as a whole. And it's a summary of the legislation from this past year. So it does talk about everything that Virginia just said. So it breaks it all down. You don't have to read the 400 pages or the 280 pages. This breaks it down to a manageable 20.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very helpful. So
yeah.
do you have that in your office?
You're getting a copy on your computer.
I just sent it to you.
It's coming right to you. Yeah.
Oh,
it's
thank
there.
you.
It's
Yes.
there.
It's there. And the other thing it requires is certain things to be done to your town plan.
Yeah.
So there has to be a housing element in your town plan, which we have a housing element in our town plan. But there have to be specifics about how you're going to go about increasing your housing density and how you're going to go about your affordable housing, how you're going to go about increasing that in specific kind of language. So, you know, that is something that we're going to have to look at when we start working on the town plan update, is those kinds of things.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Exciting
thank you.
times.
Thank
all
you.
right. Anybody else? Not hearing anything. If someone wants to make a motion to adjourn, that would be okay.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there anyone who would not want to adjourn? I am not hearing that.
Not
there's any-
tonight.
No screaming and yelling right now.
This is a good out. This is a special surprise for everyone, I think.
It's a bonus.
Let's relish this moment.
time.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, we've had a lot of meetings that have run over too.
Right, this is making up for the 20 minutes of the last meeting that we're over. It balances it out.
Okay.
So. All right, great. Well, thank you all for coming, and we will see you next time. Next time is also going to have to be remote because various people are out of town but can come in by remote.
Virginia, thank you and Keith and well, everybody, thank you for all your work on this. You put a lot of study into the town and obviously care a lot about the town. And I appreciate that. I'm an eighth generation Vermonter and a Mayflower descendant, and I just have a real pride about this place, and I think it's great.
As you should. As you should.
Good.
Care.
Well, thank you for being on.
Yeah.
All right. Good night,
Have a great
everyone.
evening.
Good night, everybody.
Au
Good night.
revoir.